Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the U.S. Embassy's special series on the future of higher education. We're very pleased to have all of you with us today. My name is Anubhuti. I work with the U.S. Embassy as a higher education specialist. I want to give it over to our Minister Counselor, David Kennedy, who heads the Public Affairs section at the Embassy in New Delhi and across our 5 consulate regions across the country. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Anu, and good evening, everybody. My name is David Kennedy, and I lead the Public Affairs section at the U.S. Embassy in India. One of our priority areas is without doubt to strengthen the U.S.-India bilateral relationship in areas such as higher education and research, and I'm very honored to work in this area. Education is and has been one of the strongest pillars of the U.S.-India partnership and a major focus of the U.S. Embassy in India. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you today, this evening, to this special lecture series on the future of higher education. The U.S. Embassy New Delhi and our partner, the Association of Indian Universities, have collaborated to implement this special lecture series for Indian academicians and administrators to discuss how higher education and international collaboration could and may change in the future, particularly in light of the current pandemic. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our partners and introduce our partners, Dr. Tej Pratap, President of the Association of Indian Universities, and his colleagues for their support for this initiative. I would also like to introduce our moderators for the evening program, Dr. Pankaj Mittal, the Secretary General of the Association of Indian Universities, certainly a good friend and a former Fulbright scholar, and my colleague, Carl Adam, First Secretary for Education and Culture at the U.S. Embassy. Carl leads our initiatives on higher education in India. Together, Carl and Dr. Mittal will be moderating today's discussion. Today is an exciting time for education in India, and I'm honored to be here. Not only is it one of the foundations of the U.S.-India relationship, but India is now entering an exciting new period to define how education will support its future. The United States shares that excitement and looks forward to working with India as it takes the new economic policy the new education policy forward. We also welcome its focus on international education and partnerships, and the news that it foresees a future where foreign universities may establish campuses in India, and that Indian universities may do the same overseas. We look forward to opportunities for American and Indian universities to increase their partnerships and collaboration on research and other areas to advance our understanding of the world today. Today, universities and research cannot thrive if they remain within their national borders. The best scholarship and research is increasingly a global venture. Today, we have the honor to have with us Dr. Mark Elliott, Vice Provost for International Affairs at Harvard University. Mark is the Vice Provost for International Affairs and the Mark Schwartz Professor of Chinese and Inter-Asian History in the Department of History. As Vice Provost, Mark oversees and works to advance international academic initiatives, extending the global reach of Harvard's research and teaching activities. In this capacity, he serves as the university's representative in negotiating agreements with foreign governments, receiving senior level international delegations, and representing Harvard to peer institutions and alumni worldwide. Mark guides Harvard's overall global strategy and sustaining its ongoing development as a global university. Mark is also an authority on the last 4 centuries of Chinese history. Quite impressive, in particular, the Qing period. Mark will open with some remarks, which will be followed by a question and answer session. We encourage you all, if you have questions or issues you would like to have raised or addressed, please enter those into the chat room and our moderators will pose them to Mark as the time permits. The session will end with concluding comments by Dr. Tej Pratap. Now, without further ado, over to you, Mark, and I look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you very, very much, David, for that introduction, and good evening, everybody. It's a very great pleasure and honor for me to be speaking with colleagues today in India. in this Future of Higher Education series, co-sponsored by the US Embassy, American Center in New Delhi, and the Association of Indian Universities. I want to start by saying that I hope everybody is well. We know that, as in the United States, numbers of those who have been hit by this virus continue to rise. And that is distressing for all of us to hear. I hope you are well. I hope your families are well. As much as I would prefer to be able to address you in person, as this would have afforded me the chance of many individual conversations and would also have allowed me to visit Delhi again, which I always enjoy very much. As we are all painfully aware, these are challenging times, and this is just not possible right now. Happily, technology enables us to remain in touch, and for that we are grateful. And who knows, the day may come when we all become so used to online interaction that it will not occur to us to say anything like, "I'm sorry, I can't be there in person," by way of an opening. In fact, since the fact that I'm conscious of saying it right now makes me wonder if that day is maybe not so far away, actually. Before I get started, I want to offer my sincere thanks to the people who have made today's event possible. Carl Adam, David Kennedy, the US Embassy, Anu Arora, Sanjay Bhagat, Minjong Bae at the American Center of New Delhi, and of course, to the president of the AIU, Dr. Tej Partap, and the Secretary General, Dr. Pankaj Mittal. It's very encouraging for me to know that American diplomacy and Indian higher education both remain equally committed to the values of spreading knowledge about educational opportunities in the US and in India. And this event is a wonderful evidence of that. As I say, I'm very happy to speak in this distinguished forum following Professor Sanjay Sarma of MIT, who spoke exactly 1 month ago today, I believe. Since, like me, he also earned his PhD at the University of California at Berkeley, I'm wondering now if that's one of the qualifications to be invited, a California education and East Coast administrative or academic appointments. But we'll see, maybe the third lecturer will demonstrate whether that's a valid proposition or not. Professor Sarma spoke of the 21st century beginning not in the year 2000, but in 2020, this year. In addition to all the reasons he gave in his remarks, let me now add one more, which is the promulgation of the new National Education Policy 2020 by the Indian government just a week or so ago. These new policies promise a new beginning in education at all levels in India and lay the foundation for a brighter future, I think, for all Indians, regardless of birth, religion, or socioeconomic situation. In the higher education sector, the NEP also points to a future in which Indian higher ed is more open, more agile, and more firmly bound with the rest of global higher education. For reasons I hope to make clear in my remarks today, I think that that is a good thing, and it comes at a very good time. The topic on which I've been invited to speak broadly is the internationalization of higher education. Given the present moment, I've thought it appropriate to consider this question in light of the pandemic and to ask, what does COVID-19 change? And depending on where you're standing, the answer to this question is either the pandemic changes everything, or the pandemic changes nothing, hence my title. Now, I don't mean to be coy. I think in the short term, it's pretty clear that the pandemic has indeed effected massive changes in the patterns we have come to observe in international higher ed. Whether in the longer term, those patterns will be permanently changed is a different question, to which I think the answer is probably not, or at least not right away. I should make clear at the outset that my approach to this problem is shaped not only by my experience in my role as the Chief International Officer at Harvard, but also by my disciplinary training. I'm a historian, as David mentioned. And what I have learned is that change typically happens more slowly than we think. Even when radical change appears to have taken place or is declared to have taken place, it usually hasn't, or hasn't yet. We should be suspicious of claims of a revolution in any sector, and claims of a revolution in the sector of higher ed, which we have all heard before, are no exception to this rule. But that does not mean that there will be no change. And I can see at least a few areas in which I expect things to shift a bit, and I'll end with some comments on that point. First, though, it would make sense, I think, to delineate some of the prevailing patterns that we are talking about pre-COVID-19. If I may, I'd like to share some slides that give a sense of what internationalization has looked like at Harvard, and then say something more about patterns in the rest of the world. Harvard is probably not a typical American school, but in many important respects, I think it is representative. And the changes that we have seen at Harvard, just in the last 20 years or so, more or less my time at the university, suggest a profound transformation in how we recruit students, how we recruit faculty and scholars, and in how we do research. And this transformation, I think, is broadly applicable to all American research universities, and in fact to research universities broadly in the Anglophone world and even beyond. Given that many, if not most, Indian universities also rely on English as a language of instruction and research, it is reasonable to expect that these trends may soon be coming to India, especially in light of NEP, and in fact, in some Indian institutions, they already are. I'll also share some slides, as I say, with trends more broadly in the world, which I think will be relevant for the conversation we'll have today, and I'm sure, or I hope anyway, will be relevant for the conversations I expect that many of you in your positions at your respective institutions are having right now about how to adapt to the changing landscape. So let me share my screen. Bear with me one moment. And let me take you through some of the changes that we have seen at Harvard, some of the numbers. Not all of these are up to date. It's difficult to gather these statistics, as many of you may know, but I think the broad picture is pretty clear. The creation of my office is certainly one evidence. My office didn't used to exist. The International Affairs Office at the center of the university was only put in place in 2007. So that's just one small way in which a more global approach to the university's mission has been evidenced. But most important probably is this number, showing the number of international students at the university. You can see that this number has been increasing steadily over the last, this just shows the last 10 years, but if we could go back further, we would see this number increasing even more steadily over a longer period of time. Roughly 1/4, depends how we count. This does not include, for instance, does not include dual passport holders. If we include dual passport holders, the number of internationals is in fact even higher than this. We can say roughly 1/4 of all degree-seeking students at Harvard are from outside the United States, 1/4. This gives a sense of the broader international community at the university, shows you the number of visas that we sponsor for visiting scholars and postdocs, for students, those who stay on in OPT, which the world now knows a lot about for reasons we may end up discussing a little bit later on, and dependents. So the total international Harvard population, again, it doesn't include dual passport holders, comes close to some 20,000 people. And this represents a very significant portion of the entire university community, meaning that Harvard and most American research universities are quite cosmopolitan places. When you walk around, some of you will have visited Harvard or you will have visited some other institutions in the US, I'm sure most of you have. You will hear all kinds of languages being spoken. You will see people from all over the world. That's a completely normal thing. This gives you a sense of where scholars and students are coming from at our institutions. China, the leading source in both categories, and India at the number 3 place, again, in both categories. India becoming a very, very important source of students and scholars and faculty in all parts of the university now for some time. This gives you a sense, I'm talking here about scholars. So these are visitors to the university for 3 months or longer. Typically, these would include postdocs. And it shows quite dramatically here, I think, what a popular destination is Harvard for international scholars wishing to spend a little bit of time in the United States. We are much richer. We are a better school for the fact that we are able to draw talent in from so many different places and in such numbers. Our research enterprise depends greatly upon this ability. In fact, the plurality of these researchers are in the medical, in biomed, and in engineering. We're also a more international faculty than we used to be. I was born in the United States, but roughly 1/3 or so of my colleagues who also teach at the university either did their degrees abroad or were born abroad or have led some significant part of their lives outside the United States. So about 1/3 of our faculty come from some kind of an international background. Again, we make our claim to being one of the leading universities in the world on the basis of an ability to bring in the best scholars and researchers and scientists from all over the world. The proof that we are looking everywhere for talent is seen in these numbers here. Another way that Harvard has become more global and more international is in its having established offices or centers of different sorts in different parts of the world. I know this is a somewhat complicated map. I hope you can see it reasonably well. You can see that many of the different schools of the university have established small offices. Most of these are just fewer than 10 people in them, but they provide a way for us to be local and to establish networks at the ground level, but also to interact, bring Harvard out to the world more effectively, and also to connect the world more effectively back to Harvard. With one exception, all of these sites were established since 1999. So again, you can see that this has happened. This has happened organically. This has not been the result of the president of the university deciding anything. This has been the result of faculty and deans at the different schools saying, hey, you know what? This is what we need to do if we are going to be able to continue to drive the research and educational mission of our school. And I have had the pleasure of visiting almost all of these sites, 3 of which are in India, 2 in Mumbai, connected to the business school and the School of Public Health, and then the Mittal Institute for South Asian Studies office in Delhi, which was established 3 years ago. Let me shift now to the second part of my presentation about the impact of globalization on higher ed more broadly. That was Harvard. Let's bring the lens out a little bit more widely. We can see 2 trends here that are in tension. One is increased collaboration, that is the globalization of research networks, and the other is increased competition, the globalization of the market for students and scholars. How do we see these trends evidencing themselves? We can see them in a variety of ways. In terms of the globalization of research, you can see here, this chart starts in the year 2000. Primarily, this is derived from publications in scientific journals based on the Scopus database, with which many of you are probably familiar. And you can see the steady rise in percentage of international co-authorship of scientific publications. The lower chart is the US generally. The lower line is the US generally. The higher line is Harvard, which we were in 2017, we're about 44%. Our estimate now, we're in the process of updating this chart, is that we are probably over 50% of our publications now are done with international co-authors. This underscores David's point a minute ago when he said that research is done internationally. It's done in global teams, and that's certainly what we're seeing at Harvard too. When you look at the distribution of universities in the world, you can see a marked rise in the number of top-ranked universities in China, and a decline in the distribution in the United States. That's not that the US universities necessarily are getting worse, it's that universities in other parts of the world, in particular in China, are getting much better. And this is evidence of greater competition for students and scholars. We see that for an enrollment, these are broad numbers of students seeking their degrees at institutions of higher education outside their native countries. So this number was around 800,000 back in 1975. In 2015, the estimate, this is an OECD estimate, was at 4.6 million. Most of the figures we see today show for 2020 that number is over 5 million, 5.3 million by some estimates. Here is one done by an Australian group last December. Again, these numbers are sometimes hard to get, but more or less, I mean, it's very clear, more and more people are looking to go abroad for their education. Some part of it may be a first degree, maybe an advanced degree. Some of them will stay abroad, some of them will come home. There's just increasing mobility, no question about it. The US share of this is pretty large, about one fifth. It used to be 1/4. That's now probably around 1/5, and has been proportionally declining. And this we may come back to discuss, but the US still remains the top destination for higher education. That's, whether this changes after COVID-19 or not is something that we will see. This chart, I won't spend time on this, shows the proportion of students coming from different parts of the world. It's very clear, China, India, South Korea, all together make up almost 75% of all students seeking their education abroad. This is a remarkable statistic, I think. This chart shows the places where people are going. And again, you can see the relative decline in the US as a destination country. The UK has been holding steady. What you see that is China, Australia, Canada, and Russia, and Japan to some degree, have become more popular as destination countries for foreign students going abroad, which means that more universities are offering more programs that are of interest to students from outside their own countries, and relying on those students for talent, in some cases for tuition dollars. You can see that in Australia, 28% of all students in higher ed are from outside the country. In Canada, that number is 21.4%, just a little bit less than that in the UK. So these are also pretty remarkable statistics. And as we have seen, international student flows virtually dried up in the last few months. The effects and the economic effects and the educational effects on these countries have been certainly very great. Programs in different parts of the world in English have gone up. English, the language of academic, the academic lingua franca. And we can see here driving this, and we can see here how these numbers have gone up. This is just to 2014. We can assume that these numbers have continued to rise. not just in Europe, but also in East Asia. This is an incomplete tabulation of universities in Japan and in South Korea with English taught degree programs. Some of these programs, I'll refer particularly to the liberal arts program at Yonsei University outside Seoul. You can apply to these programs from an American high school using the Common App. So they are directly competing now head-to-head with US institutions for students, and doing so, I should say, at price points that are far more appealing to many American families than the price point of a school like Harvard. Even though Harvard offers very generous financial aid, still that is quite a sticker price, and for many families, it would appear to be beyond their means. A year at the University College in Freiburg, an outstanding university with a long history and an English language program, is $14,000. So this has obvious appeal. So let me start with that, start with slide sharing, if I can hand things back to Sanjay to control the screen. So this gives you some sense, I think, of what the situation is like at Harvard, and the numbers reflecting the situation around the world. There are more people moving around the world seeking education. They're going to more different places than before. Competition for the best students is increasing. Competition for the best faculty is now much more globalized than it was before. Research is also done primarily, particularly in the sciences, in many fields, many STEM fields, done by global teams. A lot of this, as I say, is driven by the adoption of English as a universal academic language, and by the fact that English is the language of many of the most prestigious academic journals, and that international rankings of universities are greatly influenced by the number of publications one's faculty has in those journals. Now, let's pause and ask, so what has COVID-19 done to all of this? I would say first that for me anyway, the biggest lesson out of the pandemic is how vital global engagement has become to the educational and research enterprise at Harvard. I think I already knew this, but it was demonstrated very explicitly to me, and I think made very plain to many who maybe were not so aware of this in other parts of the universities. So if you will think back to February this year, at that time, we began at Harvard to have to curtail the movement of people in and out of campus because of COVID-19. COVID-19 at that time hadn't even been called COVID-19 yet. It was still SARS-CoV-2. And it was still an international problem. And we were in a position of having to impose travel restrictions on students and faculty who wanted to go to different parts of the world, or on people coming from different parts of the world to campus. As soon as we began to limit where people could go or who could come from outside, it became immediately apparent just how much activity there was in and out of our campus from all parts of the world. It was like draining the water out of a fast-running river and allowing you to see what the riverbed looks like. And we could see the riverbed was full of stones labeled China, India, Turkey, France, Brazil, and so on. The question is, I suppose, is this river going to fill up with water again? And well, I'm an optimist and I'm an internationalist through and through. I can promise you this river will be flowing again. Just as surely, I can also tell you that in the short and even the middle term, there will be changes. One thing, without doubt, is that the number of international students and scholars is going to go down in the coming year, and maybe even longer. Travel is almost impossible right now in many parts of the world, and it will continue to be difficult for quite some time. I think many people, many parents are going to decide that their kids should just stay at home or stay closer to home. People will put off travel, maybe waiting until there's a vaccine or waiting until the vaccine is widely available before venturing out again. Others will have made choices perhaps about a first degree this year that will bind them for a few years. So it may be a while, actually, before there's a rebound in the total number of international students going abroad. But when that rebound comes, and I think it will come, it's quite possible that the trends, some of the trends that we've begun to observe, say of a smaller US share of the total pie, will be accentuated. Still, I think there's no question that this rebound will come. The things that have been driving students to seek at least some part of their education outside their home countries. It could be the pursuit of chances for self-improvement and self-realization that are not available to them at home. It could be the desire to compare themselves with the best that the rest of the world has to offer, or simply the urge to get away, to see more of the world. Those things are not going to go away, I don't think, and they will bring back these numbers. Other things also, I think, may not be affected much at all by the pandemic, even in the middle term. I think research collaborations will continue. We're seeing them continuing, even if people cannot travel. Conferences, which were all canceled or postponed last spring, are now coming back. They're coming back in altered form, in hybrid form, or in all remote form, but they are returning. And smaller scale symposia and workshops, I think, if anything, if the Harvard experience is any indication, they've multiplied in these COVIDian times, we can call them that. People have adapted quite readily. I think they've surprised themselves by how quickly they've started doing things online that they would never have imagined that they would be willing to do just a few months ago. And it's here, I think, where we see perhaps some larger changes on the horizon. I think they're mostly positive. I'll just mention three and then wind up and we can move to Q&A. First, I think that this enormous experiment in online education will leave us all permanently changed in the sense that we will be far more willing to agree to take part in long distance educational ventures via the internet, now that we have been through this baptism of fire over the last 5 months or so. I think we would probably agree that much of the hype around MOOCs from, say, 8 to 10 years ago didn't make all that much difference in the way that our institutions work, except perhaps around the edges. But my guess is that the work that we've been doing in this area for the last several years, and Harvard has been one of many institutions involved in that, will be seen to have been preparatory to a much more widespread turn to online teaching and education in certain areas anyway, certainly those that are involved what some people call knowledge transfer, teaching skills. We can see already for many years now the enormous appetite for educational services in the private sector, where firms such as Khan Academy, just to name one, have seen remarkable success. I think that universities will become much more involved in this domain than before. For the record, though, I should point to, or just emphasize that I don't think of education solely as a matter, or simply as a matter of knowledge transfer. I don't think that this change is going to affect all parts of the market. There will always be a place for a classroom, for a seminar, even for a lecture, although I know that some have predicted the demise of the lecture. I myself don't see that happening. These changes may also find their way into how we teach even in normal times, with online meetings perhaps providing more one-on-one time with students with very, very low transaction costs. So in short, here I see that educational modalities will continue to diversify, perhaps at an accelerated pace in the years to come. Second, I see a greater willingness to do things long distance, contributing to an increased level of global collaboration. Where in what I'm now calling the before times, people might have waited for a chance to travel to initiate a conversation about a new project or try to start something. They may not think twice now about getting something going on Zoom or MS Teams or whatever other new platform comes along to jumpstart a new project or to move it on to the next stage. I think we will continue to see a lot of use of that, and collaboration will intensify across national boundaries. Third and finally, I also see a possible increase in the number of formal partnerships between universities. We were already seeing the creation, of course, of relationships of different sorts before the pandemic, and many of those schools who had done so found that they were able then to turn to these relationships to provide assistance to students and faculty who were stranded abroad or stuck at home for the longer term. Now, the benefits of partnership are not always clear, but after COVID, I think more of us in administrative positions can see the value of cultivating relationships at an institutional level, a value represented not only by research collaborations or student exchanges, important as those are, but also by getting the kind of help you can expect only from a friend with whom you have a special connection that you've made a particular effort to develop. I could go on. I can imagine other ways that these post-COVID developments might overlap and cross-pollinate. I know that there are others who are saying this is the end of the university. I'm not one of those, but I'll stop for now. I think that's probably enough for me, and we can turn now to questions and answers. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. Thanks for a very, very impressive lecture and for telling us about internationalization and about Harvard University. So far, people were thinking that because of this COVID, internationalization will decrease, collaborations will decrease, but to the contrary, you have explained that they will increase. So thanks for that. I would like to ask you one question that is relating to India. Now that around last 1 week, we had a new education policy. And for the first time, we are allowing campuses of foreign universities in India. Top 100 universities can establish the campuses in India. Now with a university like Harvard, everybody would like to have a degree in Harvard, while in India. And you do have 3 offices in India. You told 2 in Mumbai and 1 in Delhi. So does Harvard have plans to establish campuses in India? I mean, we'll be very grateful if you do.
Thank you, Dr. Mittal. We have no plans to establish a campus in India or anywhere. I think that, I mean, this is a perennial question I often get, it's a question I think that many institutions have been asking themselves. Is this not also part of globalization? It's a proposition I think that definitely deserves careful consideration. We have thought about it at Harvard, and the answer so far from our faculty is that this is not something that we think would work for us. For now anyway, the prevailing opinion is that students who want to study at Harvard actually want to come to Harvard, and Harvard is in Cambridge, Mass, or in Boston, depending on which school you're in. And it is not to be found other places. The experience is not one that can be replicated other places, even wonderful places like Delhi or Mumbai. We believe in being global and local at the same time. The faculty have led us to the places where we are. We are pretty happy with the connections that those have provided us. A campus level expansion is I think a level of commitment that it'll be a while before we're probably ready to make any kind of a commitment like that. But I have no doubt that among the 100 top institutions that have, I'm sure everybody is paying attention to the possibilities opened here by the NEP. And I'm sure among those institutions, there will be some who will see an opportunity here very much worth seizing.
So the second best, can you offer online education so that the students from all over the world can join Harvard in some manner if they are not able to come overseas, because it's very costly. You have seen the fee structure. So it is so costly and the cost of living itself is so high. So is it possible to have online education from Harvard, maybe for Indian students and all over the world?
Well, here I can offer a more positive reply, which is the answer is yes. And in fact, you can already do it. Harvard X was launched about 10 years ago, or maybe it was 8 years ago. I can't remember exactly. I think it might have been around 2012. So 8 years ago. And it has a couple thousand courses available online, all free.
But full degree programs? No,
For
it is only courses.
registration, anybody in the world can sign up. You know, there are different ways that it has been structured with certificates and you know, but the open, the lectures themselves, the courses themselves. I've taught part of one such course on the history of China. I'm not necessarily advertising that, but it's there, and when it's offered, anybody can sign up and take that class. So we are already well on the road to providing that. And I think, what I do think, and I know for a fact, because my counterpart or my colleague, the Vice Provost for Advances in Learning, who is a professor in the business school, Dr. Bharat Anand. Bharat has been very busy these last few months, as you may imagine. We will be redoubling our efforts in the online sector. So you will see more and more Harvard courses on the Harvard X platform. But you can also get right now, actually get online.
Degree?
It's there.
Means we can also get full degree or only some small courses?
It's not a degree. We don't offer online degrees. There's one at the moment, I believe, one master's degree program at the Chan School of Public Health that is available online. But here again, I think that we may see a closer examination. Harvard, maybe I should say here again, Harvard, as I say, is not a typical American school. Harvard is, as you probably know, been around a while, has only half as long as Oxford, but still for America, it's a long time. We are a pretty conservative institution. So online degrees have been something we have been hesitant to do. But I would not be surprised if out of the present crisis, we don't end up revisiting this question, and perhaps there will be more such degrees made available. I know there are some mini masters, other kinds of degrees and certificates that some schools have been coming up with. I think it's likely that there will be more and more of those kinds of things at Harvard and at other schools too.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. Now, Carl will like to ask a question.
Yes, please. Thank you, Dr. Elliott. We enjoyed the presentation very much. And there's been a lot of discussion about cost, and whether it's international education or an elite university like Harvard, it's expensive. How does that change things? Is COVID and virtual education going to drive costs down to make it more affordable? Will it allow students who otherwise may not be able to afford a true international experience? Can they do an entire international experience online now? Is that of value? What are your ideas? What are your thoughts on first of all, the value of higher education at elite university, and then also the study abroad aspect, the real cherry on top of the whole check that comes in the mail?
Yeah. These are great questions. I will tell you right up front, I am not directly involved in those conversations at the university. So I don't have I would say the closest or the greatest visibility on these issues. I will say this: at Harvard, we are not dependent upon international tuition for covering our budget. We're primarily funded by our endowment. We're a private institution. We're funded by our endowment and by philanthropy. More than tuition plays a role for sure, but we have not turned to international tuition dollars to cover any kind of cover budgetary needs. That said, obviously we rely on tuition from many students to be able to pay to offer financial aid, such as we offer to to students, particularly in the college, where we have very clear cutoffs. If you make below, and I don't remember the exact figure, I think a household income below, I think it's $68,000, you pay no tuition. Harvard is free for you if you can get in. We are one of just a very small number of institutions actually that make our admissions decisions primarily or solely on merit and not on need, and financial aid decisions are made solely on need, not on merit. And that has a lot to do with the generosity of our alumni. So, I think that the questions you're referring to in terms of pressure to lower tuition, is an online degree worth as much as an in-person degree? We are saying that it is the same, and we will see whether that proposition holds up. I think. I mean, this is the great experiment that we are all going into this fall. We will see where we come out on the other end. I know that my colleagues and I myself, I continue to teach. I'm preparing for a completely online semester. That makes some things harder. It makes other things even actually a little easier. I think we would all prefer to be in the classroom ourselves, but there may be advantages and there may be different ways of, as I was explaining to Dr. Mittal earlier, different ways of providing different parts of an education. There's been talk of some unbundling of education that may happen. Whether this happens at the college level, I'm less sure that we will see that there, but we may see more of that kind of thing in the professional schools, where degree programs tend to be shorter, and where the immersive experience of students is different. Students come in a little bit older. I think we will see, again, many different ways that at the individual schools people will be taking this, and how that works out at the level of cost will be something that we will see. We'll see what the market indicates.
Okay, thank you.
No, thanks for a great question.
Can I, Akar?
Please.
Okay. Dr. Elliott, when we see the international students scenario in India, we see that the number of international students in India is very small, something like 4,600, 47,000. Whereas the people who go out of India, it is around 7 to 8 lakhs. That means around 0.7, 0.8 million, around 1 million, we can say, who go out of the country. So what do you think? I mean, what can we do to attract more international students to India? And will having foreign campuses in India will attract international students, in the sense that will many students from the neighboring countries come to India to study even in foreign universities in addition to Indian universities? I mean, what can be the strategy for India to improve the number of international students?
Well, I think this is going to be one of the great challenges facing Indian higher education right now. We know a couple of basic things. First, we know that young Indian men and women are eager for education. And their families are very supportive of education, sending their children to schools, encouraging them to do well in their studies, and supporting them, even if it means sending them very, very far away from home, which, I mean, I know from my own personal experience is a really hard thing to send your baby off on an airplane and not see them for a long time. That's hard. We also know that Indian students are among the most talented in the world, and Harvard and other American universities are much stronger than they otherwise would be for the addition of really talented, smart, creative, dedicated, hardworking scholars and scientists from India who have come and made their careers with us, done their studies with us. I think that for Indian higher ed here, the challenge is both to try to retain some of that very best talent. Again, not everybody who comes to the United States stays, or not everybody who goes to the UK or Australia necessarily stays. Many will return home. But I think, you know, if I were in an administrative position at an Indian university, I would want to be thinking about how do I get some of the best local talent to come to my school and stay and teach, you know, be my students and teach in my university. And then on top of that, I would be thinking about, and how do I get talented international students to come, perhaps from the region. Now, I think that really there's no substitute for building up strong Indian universities. And I know from my visits to many campuses in admittedly a limited part of the country, that efforts in this direction have been underway for some time, and there have been some successes here. And I hope that the NEP will provide more room for these universities to grow and to have the kind of autonomy and independence that we know is vital for the success of all institutions of higher education. I think this has been a bit of an issue for many institutions of higher education in India in recent decades, and I hope that the new policies will improve that. The other way, of course, is to invite in, as the policy does, universities from abroad as a way of kind of providing a shortcut to a good value proposition for Indian students and to keep them in the country and to bring international students from outside. I think this is a model that can work. We have seen this work in other environments. There are a handful of Western or Australian universities that have, I think, made a go of this and been quite good. I'll name one that I'm a little bit familiar with. Monash University, based in Melbourne, has a number of international campuses, and I know I visited one of their campuses in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, where there are international students from all over the world. So, you know, I can imagine something like that easily taking root in India, and perhaps that's a model that I think there's a big market for education in India. I think, you know, some combination of foreign universities setting up campuses or joint programs with Indian universities, yes, together with the growth of wholly owned Indian universities, both public and private, is very much in the cards for the future.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. Thank you very much. Carl?
Thank you. There's a good question from the audience that you already answered. Dr. Vijay Lakshmi asked, is the higher education? I think you said pretty clearly or optimistically that it's an interruption, and with plenty of disruption in there too, but more so in the interruption, if I may paraphrase you. Yeah. But he also asked, how should Indian universities engage with international partners? Is it simply a Zoom call? Is it an email? Is it attending conferences? How would you recommend? We have many vice chancellors and professors who work in similar fields as you do. They want to make these connections. How should they start? Where should they go?
Well, I'm going to give an old-fashioned answer, which in a way goes against some of what I have been saying, but I think really the way to build is through personal relationships that already exist. And so, as I say, places where there were existing partnerships or collaborations of different kinds have managed to sustain themselves perfectly fine, but in a way that's been because they've already met and they know each other, and there's trust and a degree of intimacy, I'll call it, that is pre-existing. That's hard to establish without, I think, getting together in person, but it can be done, and it can be done through local connections. So I would say that, you know, a cold call, a cold email to somebody is probably not likely to produce very much in the way of results. But getting in touch with somebody, I mean, again, there's no shortage of scholars of Indian descent, including at the university administrator level, at American or UK or Australian or New Zealand or Canadian schools. And I would exploit those connections. There may be people who are faculty members to make introductions and to serve as bridges between institutions in India and institutions outside India. For me, I mean, I get many mails from schools in India and from schools all over the place, and you know, frankly, it's difficult to know which ones to respond to. It's hard to respond to them all. It's the ones where, say, a faculty member comes to me and tells me, you know, for my field, a connection with this school really makes sense, and I need your support to build it. If I feel like, as an administrator, I feel I can support faculty in their work, in their teaching and research, then it's worth my time. My job is to serve the faculty and to serve the research and education mission of the school. So if a faculty member comes to me and say, I need you to help me here, figure out a way to create this agreement, fine, I'm there.
Okay.
So that's, I think, the key.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Mehta.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Elliott, like when we were talking about increasing the collaborations between Indian and foreign universities, or maybe US universities, one issue which I feel is impacting the internationalization is absence of a network of international educators like NAFSA. In India, we do not have a network of Indian international educators. Do you think that is important? We should be having one, and how soon, and how do we have it?
That's a really, really good question. It shows you spent a lot of time thinking institutionally, and that's a good thing. I do think that such associations are helpful. We have, you mentioned NAFSA. There are a number of such associations in the United States. There's the American Council on Education. There's the Association of American Universities. There are at least 2 or 3 others, and many more besides that I'm just not so familiar with. And you know, we call these in the United States, we refer to them often as lobbying organizations. Many of them have either are based in Washington, D.C. or have offices in Washington, D.C. And they help to shape policy and provide input to lawmakers on legislation. And I think that you know, we have certainly seen in the last few months how important these institutions can be in trying to ensure that government policy does not get in the way of the international flows of talent that are crucial to our success as universities, and that are crucial to the success of research that we all need to solve the world's problems. You know, this is, I'm afraid that there's some cynical views out there which make it sound as though universities are only interested in money and only interested in tuition and in making a buck. And I don't deny that there are some schools probably in which money making is the main goal. Although I have to say, if money making is your main goal, there are probably easier businesses to get into than higher ed to do it. It's a big commitment in higher ed. I've got to think that the returns are better in some other industries, but I'm not a businessman, so what do I know? I think that the role of the university, broadly speaking, in all our societies as an engine of innovation and growth, as a place where problems can be thought about systematically, carefully, and solutions can be found, is impossible to overestimate. And associations of the sort that you're describing help us to make sure that we are well positioned, and we have the proper frameworks set up in our countries so that we can go about the work that we are best designed to undertake. So I know Harvard has benefited from being part of these networks, some more tightly wound in, others perhaps less so. But I think that we're all facing, to varying degrees, many of the same problems. And it makes all the sense in the world for us to be meeting with each other, talking, sharing ideas for solutions,
Yes.
and working together toward a common goal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Carl?
I'd like to explain to everybody that Dr. Elliott's a great sport. He had agreed to this webinar long before the NEP had been announced. So it's very convenient that he's here and able to speak with us now. But we had a great question from our audience about what the NEP is trying to do or appears to be doing, and creating a brand of Indian higher education, a brand of quality, a brand of excellence, brand of value. These things you can definitely find at Harvard. Harvard has done a great job cultivating its brand, cultivating. Indians are clearly, Indian higher education is also looking to India to attract international students, not just through the 100 international universities it seeks to invite in, but through its own universities, and not just IITs or private schools. But in your experience, you've seen China rise as a brand of higher education. You've been a part of Harvard. How can Indian higher education achieve these really atmospheric heights of branding in higher education?
Well, I think that really what's required more than anything is a committed group of faculty, and to bring in really the best talent, the best faculty in higher education, as in sports, as in business, as in any other sector, expects and can command a certain value in the market. So there will need to be a willingness to invest major sums of money, both in terms of salaries and research support mainly for science. I think where you see the rise in rankings of, I showed you this chart of the rise in rankings of universities in China. This has been built primarily on the back of improvements in STEM, right? The American model of a liberal arts education is one that is still pretty much only to be found in the United States. There are a few exceptions. I mentioned the program in Freiburg. There's this program at Yonsei in Korea. But that's not been what has driven the improvements in universities in most places. Really, it has been mainly around STEM. And STEM is expensive. China has made this remarkable turnaround. To be clear, China had a distinguished, call it the 50, 60-year history of universities, modern universities that began to be established at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. So it did have a foundation to build on. Colonial India did not have such a foundation. So there is India is starting from a different place than China did. But the advances that China has made here, and to a degree this has been replicated in Singapore, in Taiwan, in Korea as well, and to a degree also we've seen in Malaysia, is in government investment in infrastructure, brand new campuses, in new laboratories, and often very expensive kinds of facilities, accelerators, supercomputers, this kind of thing. And you build that and people will come. So there, it certainly has been government led. Private universities in China they've kind of just started. We've yet to see what that's going to look like. So I would say that we'll need to see a firm hand of the government in providing a way of creating a space for universities and then getting out of the way and letting faculty do their thing. Students will come if they see a great. I mean, you've got JNU, just to pick one school. It's not the only one by any means. The IITs have demonstrated that this can't be done. It's not that it can't be done in India. Of course it can be done. It's more a level of political commitment and a decision to make a plan for 20 years and get there. The huge advantage India has here is that, again, English is very widely spoken. So you don't have to do what, you don't have that obstacle that you have in many countries, especially in East Asia, where now, English is spoken in the universities, but it's not spoken more widely in society. It does puzzle me as to why we don't have more outstanding universities in India. There's definitely the talent. It's totally doable.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. We look forward to that. The world can use the more competitive universities we have in the world. The Harvard president says this all the time. Harvard is not afraid of competition. Competition makes us all better.
Yes, to compete with yourself. Dr. Elliott, this is a question from an audience, Finu Jose. India is a large country and we have a population of something like 130 billion. And every university is not IIT and JNU, which you were just referring to. And there's a big digital divide between, there are remote areas, rural areas, backward areas, and good and not so good areas. So that digital divide in terms of availability of infrastructure, one thing, how to bridge the digital gap, and second is, do you in USA face such a situation? And if yes, then how do you handle it?
Dr. Mittal, to make sure that I understand, the question about the digital divide is, do we have this in the United States? Is that right?
One is there a digital divide in US also? Are there universities which are not having access to technology, or there are students who are not having access to technology or network or bandwidth? And if yes, how do you address that issue?
So, okay, the answer is definitely yes. In the United States, there is a digital divide. There are remarkable disparities in the available of internet, depending on which part of the United States you're in. And rural communities in the US are very badly served, in fact, by internet providers. So let me just mention that this fall, as many of you may know, the decision at Harvard College is to provide instruction remotely to virtually all students, with the exception of some first-year students and students who have inadequate learning environments at home. And we are bringing all of those students back into residence. They will still be taking their courses remotely, but they will be on campus, in campus housing. Many of the students who fall into that category are students who live in places where there's no internet, or who come from families where internet service is too expensive. Again, the US market here is by no means all that well, I think, all that well regulated. I can't believe what I have to pay for internet, and even my internet goes out sometimes here in my study. This is not an issue that's unique to India at all. And institutions need to be able to provide, if you're going to provide online education, you have to be sure that you're the students you're serving have access to the internet. So if I may be allowed to point once again to the Chinese example, China made a commitment a couple of decades ago to put broadband everywhere, everywhere. So I remember a visit to China, this was probably more than 10 years ago. I was leading a tour out in the end of the Great Wall of China. So this is the middle of the desert in Western China. There's nothing around, it's just desert. I got a great internet connection. Unbelievable. I could call my friend back home. So it was a short call because it was expensive, but I could still make the connection. You know, there is, I come back again to what seems to me really a matter of political will. If the Indian government or state governments were to decide to provide, to blanket the country with strong broadband and make internet available and accessible, I know it could do that. There have been conversations about this as far as the providing of health services for people in rural communities. I've talked to some of the entrepreneurs who are in the business of doing that, using 5G, the new generation of broadband. This can certainly be done for higher ed. There's no reason why that should be why that should prevent any young Indian person from getting the kind of education they want to get if that's to be made available to them online.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. We are running out of time. I think we will have to close now, although the questions are many. Maybe I'll tell Anu to send the questions to you if you have time, if you can answer them.
They've been great questions.
And it seems you have an answer to every question. So thanks for that. Thank you very much. Now, may I request Professor Tej Pratap, who is the President of AIU, to give the closing remarks. Thank you, Professor Elliott. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mittal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Well, Dr. Mark Elliott, it's a very special day for all of us. I think also between the Embassy of the US in India and the Association of Indian Universities, a lecture in series, and I very much appreciate. I think this partnership now kind of creating an enthusiasm around in India for USA, and we have picked up rightly Harvard University. If I sum up the take-home messages that you have given this afternoon, I will start from what you said, is that didn't start in 2001. That was the message that we had it earlier, but in your things, national education policy offers us an opportunity for this thing. Internationalization of higher education.
We can't hear you, Dr. Pratap. Do you want to just?
Yes.
There's a lot of disturbance.
Disturbance from my side. Is it okay now?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Is it okay? Yeah, I'll be short. I think the changes expected that you had said very rightly that I think we need to focus on recruiting the kind of students, focus on recruitment of teachers, and I am sure others also like your example of our faculty, in terms of students, in terms of research projects. There.
Dr. Mittal, can you step in? We can't hear sir very clearly. Could you also give the closing remarks?
सर आपकी आवाज आ नहीं रही है, आप थोड़ा सा या तो माइक के पास आके बोलें.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement which is preventing, I think, or there's a cable that's moving.
सर
A
थोड़ा
wire.
सा माइक के आस कंप्यूटर के पास आके बोलेंगे तो सुनेगा.
I am very much near the computer.
Yes.
Is it okay now? Is it okay or not? Then you can. I am very close.
Actually, Dr. Tej Pratap is in Pantnagar, which is a very hilly area with a lot of rain and all, and the climate is not very clear all the time. So there, I mean, this is the digital divide I was talking about. Even the vice chancellor is not able to access the internet very properly. So what happens to rest of the people? But, sir, I'll thank on your behalf. So thanks, Dr. Elliott. Thank you very much for a wonderful, amazing talk. It was really nice to hear you, and I'm sure all the vice chancellors, the faculty members who have joined us, they must have enjoyed the talk, and they must have learned a lot from your talk about the Harvard and the US education system and the internationalization of higher education. And the way you answered all the questions, they were, I mean, you answered in such a nice manner that everybody could guess, like, and in a very frank opinion, like Harvard doesn't open the campus, so they don't open the campus. It was a very, very frank discussion with you. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see you again sometime. Thank you very much.
It was
Please,
a privilege and a
please
pleasure.
remember to join us next week. Sorry, Dr. Elliott.
No worries.
Go ahead. Please remember to join us in September for another wonderful talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mark. Bye-bye. Signing off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good to see you, Carl.